Oh,
Sorry.
wait, I thought we were on live. So
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Pastrami Nation podcast. Today we have a very, very special guest. I'm Kevin. Of course, we got Christian with us today, and today we have the co-founder and editor-in-chief of Wednesday Magazine here, Kevin Grady. Welcome to the show, Kevin.
thank you. Great
Yeah,
to be.
thank you for joining us. So we were talking about it right before we started, but first, do you consider Wednesday a magazine or a book?
It's really a bit of both. I mean, it's distributed. Ginkgo Press distributes it as a book, and I think the way things have changed in recent years, so that it's harder to find magazines. It's not there's not like as many. There's not a Tower Records all over the place, and there's not a Barnes and Nobles are even harder to find. So it's kind of it comes out infrequently, and so we kind of talk about the content being evergreen, and so it's more of a book type of thing.
Okay.
You're not going to get any news out of
Yeah,
of Wednesday, you know what I mean? But ultimately, it's really is more of a magazine. It's a magazine format.
very cool. So let's dive into Wednesday a little bit. So here's the book. This is the first issue. Came out earlier this year. This thing is massive. It's packed to the brim of it's considered the Bible of dark culture. Can you kind of explain that a little bit to people who don't know what Wednesday is? Can you explain the concept behind Wednesday?
Yeah, a lot of people ask me about that because they go, dark culture. I didn't know that was a thing, and it's like, well, it's always been a thing,
Right.
like when Beethoven was doing music, it was a thing. When Simon and Garfunkel did, their what's the track?
Oh yeah.
Sounds of Silence, right?
Yes.
It's a thing. And when Edgar Allan Poe was writing, it was a thing. And so our concept for this was really that it's this thing that's around us. I think there's a word goth that a lot of people associate with. Is goth a part of this? It is, but it's more than that. It's kind of like this whole idea of darkness has been around since people first had light in a cave, and we're what's in the shadows, right? So there's this whole sense of mystery, trying to understand our place in the world. And then I think increasingly now, life has always been dark, but the perception now is that it's quite dark. And I think most of us feel that way. A lot of things statistically are actually better than they've ever been, but doesn't feel that way for all of us on the ground. Right. So,
Right.
So to me, that the whole conception of this was based around, how do you take the darkness that's around us? How do you take lemons and make lemonade? How do you, and so I see it almost as if Edgar Allan Poe were brought back to life and he was editing Kinfolk or something. It's more of a lifestyle type of thing. And so part of that will be, straight out goths. Part of that will be people that like horror films. Part of that will be people that are just philosophical about life or suffer from depression, which is something I've suffered from and so there's this aspect of what do you do with the negative aspect, and how do you reconcile it and try to come out in a positive light,
Absolutely. And that's something I think, obviously, like a lot of people, so many people struggle with things like depression and things like that. And that's oftentimes where we get some of our best art. Like you said, it's a catalyst for kind of creating and to help us get through the darkness. We have to create light, right?
Yeah.
Like one couldn't exist without the other.
Yeah.
Which I think is a cool concept. So when you're putting this book together, what were kind of some of your main goals with the publication as a whole, right? Like, was it like what kind of audience were you trying to reach, and what were you trying to put out into the world?
Yeah, I think it's funny because there are people that I know that have felt they've questioned it. Well, dark, why are you focusing on the negative, and all that kind of thing? And obviously the work that's included in this, the art, the music, the fashion, the film stuff, the writing, it's a positive thing for those who are doing it, right? So so it's kind of funny. It's what are your definitions? I've always been very fascinated with Stanley Kubrick, and all of his great films had a sense of this inherent discrepancy in each of us between darkness and light, you know.
Mhm.
And so, you know, I was raised Catholic. I, you know, was an altar boy. You know, I was given all the answers. Some of the answers were good, you know, but I mean, but
Right.
it's a process where you try to understand your place in the world and everything. And I think our aspirations with Wednesday were to try to take this the reality of darkness, and then try to see how darkness can be a catalyst for creativity. You know, how can it make, what does it prompt? I mean, and like any it doesn't matter what genre of music you're into,
Right.
like 90% of it is about heartache, right?
Always.
So
Yeah. It's inevitable.
that's what it is. It's part of the human
Yeah.
condition. And I think there's also a sense of gallows humor that I think we wanted to infuse in it. You know, a sense of sometimes you just got to laugh. I mean, it's just like, okay, this is nuts, you know, everything's okay. You know what I mean? And so what we hoped to pull off was something that was not heavy handed. It wasn't so dark that it, you know,
Mm.
but it had a sense of humor, it had a self-awareness. But also, you know, went beyond, you know, goth music, and went into this more general thing. So that's something we're still trying to work on. We're trying to kind of, you know, get contributors, get people to be aware of it. That's a, you know, it's a hard thing to do. But
Yeah.
ideally, the idea would be that it becomes more of a brand. It becomes something, you know, we'd like to do products. We'd like to do scents and clothes and things like that that can be, you know, we'd like to do a cookbook, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
I love the idea of the aesthetic of like darkness and death. The idea of like the memento mori, right? To remind
Mhm.
yourself of death.
Mhm.
There's this fantastic graphic novel. I have it sitting there, called Day Tripper, but it's basically a celebration of life by looking at life through the lens of death, right?
Yeah.
And like understanding how everything is temporary and makes it that much more important. I think that's beautiful, especially like when we, uh, especially like when we deal with death so much, and like all that darkness. It's important for us to be able to find that light in it,
Yeah.
and I think that that's really cool. And it is funny how some people, you know, I think all of us kind of have to deal with our own darkness, and it kind of shocks me when I meet people that are like, "Have you tried just being happy?" Or you know
Oh
what I
my
mean?
God. Yeah. Just
And it's
snap
like,
out of
oh,
it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Oh, why didn't I think of that? I'm sorry. Yeah,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. But yeah, you know, kind of accepting it, and not just accepting it, but also finding the beauty in it. I think is really important, especially as like a creative artist. You know,
Yeah.
there's a lot to pull from it.
Absolutely. I think that's a big part of it. I've had that. Just exercise, you know, it's like you're so depressed you can't get off your ass, you can't get out of bed, but just exercise. Yeah. You know,
Oh, dang! Thanks.
it does work. You know, it's all a process. And I think we that would be a subtext of Wednesday that I really want to be a part that acknowledges, you know, there's nothing worse. I remember during COVID being on Zoom calls, business Zoom calls, where there's some people have no perspective, and it's like people are suffering, they've been locked in their home. Maybe they have anxiety issues, whatever. You know, we all have our battles that we go through, right? And the kind of corporate mentality that doesn't acknowledge that just thinks everybody's going to be on their A game 24/7, you know, is delusional, you know. And
Ridiculous.
that was kind of part of one Wednesday when I started getting the idea of it. It was, you know, you have to acknowledge reality, and then hopefully you come out with a psychology that allows you to get through this life in a positive way. You know what I mean? So it's not hanging on to negativity or just be for the sake of it. No, it's kind of a sense of, you know, things can be really bad, but there still can be light. You know what I mean?
Right.
That was part of the process, I think.
Absolutely.
I think like that's also a part of like art in general. I think it's like one thing art should be self-serving. Like you want to put the art out that you want to see in the world. But I also think like, you know, that it allows us to kind of explore and find these beautiful things. I totally lost track of what I had it right there. And
Yeah,
then
because you got the Dodgers game.
I know. No, I'm not listening to it anymore. I'm not.
You get extra points for doing this interview during.
Yes, you do.
So
Christian, you're an artist. Like you teach.
I am.
art.
Yeah. So I think that's I was going somewhere with that. Yeah, there's we talk about this a lot in our classes about or I talk about this in class about like oh, that's it. As artists, as creatives, like we are in the business of manipulation, right? Like it's not like we're deceiving the audience. The audience knows this. As like consumers of art, we know this. When we go to the movies, when we read a book, that's the agreement. I want you to make me scare me, make me cry, make me laugh. I want to have a cathartic experience in a safe environment. You know what I mean? So I think even within that, I like Kevin, you're a huge fan of horror, right? Like absolutely. You know, and again, like that's, and you have your reasons. We talk about this a lot, and a lot of it is like you explore or like you really appreciate like the creative aspects of like
the creative, and it is an outlet. It is a very very visceral, but you know, I suffer from depression as well. And when I go to watch a horror movie, like I get to experience the craziest horrors, but like in a completely safe environment where I'm not getting injured or I'm not getting hurt or anything, but it's very cathartic for me.
Right.
It's kind
the
of
problem I have, and probably this is because I'm so old, is that I can't get scared. I almost cannot get scared. I get scared by real life. I get scared by the news every day.
Oh yeah,
every
absolutely.
minute of every day. But you know, it's hard. You know what I mean? And I want to get to that place where I used to be, where I could. Oh, I gotta put the lights on tonight, but you know, too jaded. But I still try.
I'd much rather pick up the Wednesday and get scared in a controlled way than turn on the news and get scared.
I know.
Yeah, no.
I'd want to control my fear a little bit more.
Totally.
No, but I feel you on that, Kevin. I'm a little bit there as well. Like, you know, I've only recently kind of like we watched the third Terrifier film that was released in theaters, and so over the top, so crazy that like I was just shocked by it. So something new and something crazy that I had never seen before. So that's the kind of stuff I'm kind of looking for, I guess, the more kind of extreme stuff now. But like there is a lot of great horror that I've been wanting to be scared by, but it just doesn't do it for me like it used to anymore. I'm not as scared anymore as I used to be.
Yeah, my favorite of the past, you know, year or two has been Skinamarink.
I haven't seen it yet, but I've heard
good
things about it.
I see it as almost it's almost an atmosphere. It's almost an ambient movie, kind of like 2001: A Space Odyssey, which is
okay. Yeah.
It really is an experience. It's almost like, you know, it's not this ongoing narrative. You don't even see a full person in the whole film. You know, it's these little kids that wake up one morning and their parents are gone and all the windows and doors have disappeared in their house.
Interesting.
And it goes on for the next probably couple of years where they're interacting in the space with them. Force, you know. And I can't say it made me scared, but it was very involving, and it really, you know, brought you know kind of I find it really fascinating, you know. And what I start to wonder about is also what actually is horrific is AI. Some of the AI creations that are coming out. There's, I think, is a guy on Instagram, and just this stuff is nightmare fuel for sure.
Yes,
you know,
absolutely.
It's crazy, and the weird part of it is it's all coming from human history, right? It's all pulling from this stuff, but it's pulling from a crazy part of our brains that Hollywood mostly hasn't tapped into. You know what I mean? It's like. So there, I think there's going to be some scary as hell movies coming out, you know, that are going to be AI aided, where it's just, you know,
because it's almost like they're seeing the part of us that we haven't seen yet, or like, exactly. That's kind of terrifying. That's the real terrifier there.
Yeah, it really is. We watched. I saw the TV Glow the other night. I don't know if you guys have seen that. That one's phenomenal, and it's scary in a completely different type of way. But I like movies that kind of make you think a little bit more, and are kind of that deeper kind of scary meaning rather than kind of in your face type stuff. But definitely check that movie out. It's pretty good.
A24 has done such a great job. I mean,
they have.
I'm always willing to give one of their movies a chance, but you know what I mean? Because it's just, and the marketing is is phenomenal. It's just kind of
Yeah.
really, really,
Yeah.
and the products they do, the books and stuff. So I love all that. Yeah.
Absolutely. And speaking of A24, we got a really, really great interview in this book with Robert Eggers, right?
Mhm.
We did some, obviously, The Lighthouse and The Witch, two of my favorite just horror movies in general over the past decade or so, specifically The Witch. But
Mhm.
um, when you're I'm curious how you so this was the first issue. I'm curious how you go about kind of, you have people like Tricky, Ellis Glass, Robert Eggers, things like that. How do you put something like this together? So you have a vision, you want to create and celebrate dark culture. Who are you looking for? What kind of stories are you looking for? And how do you kind of get that all rolling into one kind of book?
Yeah, I've worked on. I had a couple of other magazines in the past, Gum and Lemon.
Mhm.
This is around 2008, 2000, around late,
Right.
and and I think it's one of those things. I think our approach is very different than typical media.
Mhm.
I don't care that your new album's coming out or your new movie's coming out. That's not what
Right.
Wednesday is about or Lemon was about. It's also, I don't care about doing critique of creative work. I think I don't want to critique someone else's creative work. If people are doing something, there's value in that. There's plenty to critique politically and other things in this world, which I'm
Yeah.
more than happy to do. But not, so I think I think our approach has been different. So we were able to get people like David Bowie or Daft
Mhm.
Punk in the past with Lemon
So cool.
interested, because I think they could sniff out that this wasn't that it was it's an art project for us, really,
Right.
and they could sense that somehow, they could sense. I remember Daft Punk that said, "This is crazy because we did this thing and it came out like 8 months later. It's obviously you're not, you know what I mean? It was
Yeah.
we were trying to make, not to sound pretentious at all, but
No.
trying to make it's an artistic vehicle,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And
I mean,
so the precedence of that, once we had David Bowie involved in something, people will listen, and so it was easier with this with Wednesday to come out of the gates with some pretty interesting people.
it
Gotcha.
it's apparent on like both ends, like with what you guys are trying to do with the people that you're trying to interview and like collaborate with, but also from like the reader standpoint, it's really obvious that you guys are doing something different. And speaking of like Lemon, you've had a long, successful career in publication, back to like the truth ads
Mhm.
for cigarettes. I being a smoker all through that, I appreciated all of it. I no longer smoke. I partly thank you for that. Um, but yeah, even down to like the nutrition facts design. Like, so did you get your start as a graphic designer originally?
Yeah,
Or?
yeah. I'm a graphic designer, and that's how I make my living, and that's what I love. So yeah, that's ongoing. And then at a certain point, I decided that I wanted. I always had these side projects, and that's kind of what I've wanted to keep going. I didn't. So I've worked at places, and while doing these projects, and I guess it's kind of like my side hustle type of thing. But I've always done it. You know, so that's still the case. Yeah.
Right. I mean, I would say like it's a lot more than graphic design, but at the root of it, like it's
Oh, absolutely. Graphic design is the core of it for
right.
sure.
It's like
I've
absolutely
worked in
gorgeous.
advertising. I've worked in innovation. I was at IDEO, and so it's a lot of, the nutrition label, as you said. So it's a weird kind of, it's kind of a weird range from Daft Punk to dark culture to the nutrition label. That's on it.
So much has changed within. I mean, we kind of were talking about it a little bit before we started recording, but so much has changed in like publication within even just like the last 10 years, if not the last 20 years. Um, how how is it like trying to go out about like publishing a magazine or like a publication in 2024, as opposed to like 2008?
Yeah, it's hugely different. Um, it's kind of depressing in some ways, but it is what it is, because just back then we were doing Lemon, and it was all over the place. There was a lot of vehicles for it to come out, a lot of places for it to go, and a lot of people that are receptive to it. And now it's just there's just so much going on and everything. So it's not viable from our perspective to have a print mag. It's not gonna, it's not from a business standpoint, it's not, but as a designer, it's what I want to have this proof point thing that comes out once a year. But then it's going to be about, I want it to be a community. I want it to be, we've done a couple events. We did one in San Francisco and one in Chicago where we had these Wednesday events that were pretty interesting. I want to get into doing products and things like that. So it's more of kind of a lifestyle brand, I guess, is the way to think about it, but more of a community, really. So that's where it needs to go. The print is really just because I love print.
Mhm.
It would be much easier and much less expensive to not, care about this stuff. But it's kind of like just the embossing of the W with the blood drops on the.
Yep.
You can't see it here, but it's just the smell of the ink and everything, and I think that's I don't think that's just because I'm getting older. I think with the resurgence of vinyl and stuff, I think, or cassette tapes even, there's a sense of wanting some tangible aspects,
physical media.
Yeah, because we all spend, I mean, I'm guilty of it as much as anybody else. I mean, I spend so much time, it's
So I actually, right before this, I kind of just came back from Barnes and Noble. How would I go about finding like Wednesday if I wanted to pick it up? Is it online that I have to order it, or?
Well, Amazon has it, except to hell with Jeff Bezos.
Yeah, exactly. Especially right now. Yeah.
But that's with the last issue. There's been certain bookstores and boutiques across the country. Ginkgo's going to put it out again. You can get it through our site, wednesdaymagazine.com. But we need a magazine distributor as well. That's what we need, because there's places overseas that are wanting it, and it's just so expensive. That's a detail we need to work out, because it's as we grow, we need to be able to kind of go out to these other places. And there's a lot of these amazing magazine stores that just have everything, but since we're distributed as a book, it hasn't happened yet,
I think like a lot of like our age, we were talking about like Tower Records. Man, that tickles my nostalgia bone, and like that makes me really a little sad. Like that was a huge part of like growing up, was like going to the bookstore, looking at the magazine racks, and like it's kind of sad now when you see like the state of like what a magazine rack looks like at Barnes and Noble, because it's like, I mean, it's not the same, and it's really different. I don't know, but talking about Lemon, I remember like when Vice magazine first started up. I remember like I saw Adbusters. I'm like, oh cool, they're still going. That's cool. I had no idea. But it's good to know that like there's people like you out in the world still like that have like a pure intention behind their publication.
Yeah, well, it used to be really fun. It's not just. I honestly don't think it's about. It's not even a generational thing. It's like Gen Z would love to go into Tower Records right now. I can promise.
Yeah, yes.
They've never seen it.
You're right.
You know what I mean? Like, I remember living in London and going to the Virgin Megastore on Oxford Street, and it was just like this. It was like this other land. You know what I mean? And they had everything from. They had comic book section. They had everything. And it was just so. It was just it was like a museum to walk around, really. And then things like Barnes and Noble were just like the commercial aspects, where it's like, okay, that little did we know that would be the last bastion of, you know what I mean? So it's a weird thing. It's a weird time, because you can find anything you want, and there's amazing stuff out there, but it's not quite the same as being able to, go out in the real world and just experience it and pick it up and all that kind of thing, So yeah, we definitely are part of that, but I don't think it's so much a nostalgic or even a generation thing. I think it's just a human need,
Yeah. It's like my daughter, she's 13. She has recently, like, she refuses to read anything on electronic. Like she always reads the physical books, but now she's getting into a physical media phase. So she's looking for CDs constantly. Like she wants the CDs. We pay for Apple Music, but
Yeah.
she wants the CDs. She needs the CD, the record. She needs all this stuff. And it's a lot harder to find that stuff. I mean, Portland has a pretty good selection of record shops, which is really good. A lot of used CDs and stuff, but Target, Best Buy, all these places, you can't find that stuff anymore. So it's like that stuff is still there. It's tangible. The kids,
well, to be fair, you can find Taylor Swift.
oh, you can find Taylor Swift, and we have found Taylor Swift.
The last pop star.
Yeah, exactly. But I think the crazy thing is, me and my wife, we went through a purge a few years ago. Kind of got rid of a lot of our CDs, unfortunately, because saving space and stuff. But like half the stuff we had, my daughter wants now. So like we're like double, triple dipping into everything, and I'm like, dude, like you gotta stop.
Well, that's kind of nice though that they, I still have this habit. I buy so much vinyl, but but the reality is, I know when I get it, I might play it once or twice, and it's just, and I've got to do the math at my age, or it's like, God damn, I got to stop this. But I just want I just want the physical. If I really love the music, it's just kind of like it's like this is, Trentemüller's.
Nice.
It's beautiful cover.
Gorgeous,
dark music, but really beautiful. Like I don't know if I'll ever play it, but
it's nice. It's nice to have.
Yeah, it's nice to have, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's I think part of what maybe the way to deal with it is to try to get a finite space. This is the so if you get something, you got to get rid of something. I think that's what I got to move to next.
That's what my wife says about all these Lego sets I got here.
Oh yeah,
I clearly don't know anything about getting rid of anything.
Right? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Bookshelves behind you.
Collectors. I got some. I collect skulls too. I got some memento moris there.
Yeah, we got your skulls.
There you go. Cool. I got my little coffee mug too. I put all my pens and stuff in.
That's awesome. I love that. That's a
beautiful
house.
Awesome. Yeah, this is this German on Etsy, German.
Oh wow!
They do all kinds of. This is the Psycho House, but you put some lights in it, and it's it's pretty amazing. But they do a lot of other houses from Addams Family House or the
Munster's house. Probably.
Munster, yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. So back to Wednesday a little bit. So you talked about like how this book, it's a community, right? You want to build that community, build that thing. And so when I was younger, when I was like growing up in the 90s and stuff, it was hard to come across things that were people who were into the same things I was, because I wouldn't say I was the goth kid, I had this bubbly exterior, but I was also had like love horror, and I, spoke, the darkness. I was a writer, artist, all these things. But I can guarantee you if, and also when I was a kid, it was a teenager, is very specific as to the publications you would get, right? So you could get Fangoria, right? Which was about horror stuff, but that was all movies, or it was either movies, music, whatever. This thing I definitely would have picked up when I was a teenager. I can only imagine some kid, some teen, who doesn't feel, we're all connected now by the internet and stuff, but picking up this book and being like, dude, like this is awesome. Like, I'm not alone. Like, this is like, so many other people out there like that. And I think that's a really, really cool thing. I think a lot of people are going to come across books like this, and really it can change a life, to be 100% honest. Right. Cause and I think that's really, really cool. So you have this first issue here. You said that you guys were working on the second issue.
Yes.
So what kind of stuff, what's that process been like? And what do you got going on for the second issue of
we have there's some really interesting people in it. We're gonna have 3 covers for the next issue. We like having multiple covers.
Yes.
So we have Norman Reedus from Walking Dead.
Very cool.
Which is pretty interesting. We did a really good shoot with him, and he's been quite supportive of the project, which is nice.
Amazing.
And we have Boy Harsher, the band that
nice.
Really, really, really cool stuff. We did a really interesting shoot with them in upstate New York.
Very cool.
A lake where they're swimming and stuff. It's very different, Actually, the photographer that Rebecca Campbell is good friends with them and known them for years. So just left them alone so they could just be really intimate and really get these interesting photos and everything. So that worked out really well. And then our third cover is sorry, hang on one second, is Damien Gillet, who's a choreographer. He's like an art, ballet choreographer, does this amazing stuff. He was Madonna's choreographer on our last tour, but then Suspiria, the movie, most recent remake, he choreographed all of that.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so he's really amazing. And then we have John Carpenter, the director. We have musician artists like Matt Hansel did really, really cool stuff. David J from Bauhaus, Alyssa Bennett, who's she's a really creative, incredible person. So a lot of interesting stuff. So it's kind of building on the last issue. The template of the last issue worked really well. And then getting the illustration of Virgil Finlay, who did a lot of almost like pulp, horror and science fiction illustrations and stuff, following on the Aubrey Beardsley from last time. So so we can't wait to get it out. It just, there's very few of us working on it. We have a very small staff. Myself, Adam Larson is an amazing designer, creative director who I've known for years. We worked on the last issue together. Lisa Waldron is a designer who's helping us with it, and then we have writers like Andre Obin and Laura Albert, JT Leroy, the JT Leroy books that came out.
Laura is incredible. Actually, Deathly Logical was probably one of my favorite stories in this book.
Yeah. And so for those that don't know, Deathly Logical, first of all, if you don't know who she is, just Google JT Leroy and you'll be like, oh, holy crap.
I've done a deep dive and I've had my mind blown.
And there's movies out, from documentaries to feature films that are about that story. But anyway, that story was from her forthcoming kind of biography. She was living in New York City. She was a teenager. She was having a lot of issues. Secular Jewish, mom, very intelligent, no nonsense, no bullshit, and with regards to ghosts and things like that. And then just the experiences that they had in that place that were really, intense, you know what I mean? And so it takes on, it actually means more because of the source material, where it was coming from and everything. So I think that's one of the quintessential, pieces in that first issue.
Absolutely. I highly recommend it. If you're going to read any like stories out of this, like read that one and you'll want the whole book. Like, honestly, like it's so good. And that's one thing I did want to mention as well, just a diverse amount of voices that you have in this book. Like, it's so, you have everybody is contributing to this thing, right? How important when creating a book like this is that kind of diversity to have in here? Well, how do you, what does that mean to you as far as having it? Horror in general is pretty, pretty diverse. But what does it mean to you to get all of that into this book as well?
Well, I wanted it to be, I wanted it to
a celebration.
Well, it's an interesting thing because if you look at goth culture, it tends to be associated with youth, although now older goths are old to me, So, but I was never a goth. I mean, I'm a goth in the sense that,
right?
Nicolas Cage said, or Keanu Reeves, they associate, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
But I was never, you know what I mean? And so I don't know. I feel like there's a really we wanted to kind of have this sense of a point of view that it has a lot of experience, right? So a lot of writers are actually are older. They're in their 40s or 50s or even their 60s. And so the perspective is there's a lot of years there, you know what I mean? And So I guess what I'm getting at is it's
No.
kind of like it's not your hot topic goth.
I love that.
Yeah,
I love that.
I think with kids, you know, that darkness comes from the angst. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like when you've
Yeah.
been around a while, that darkness comes from a different place. You know, it's
Yeah.
like it's kind of been
Well, I
brewing.
think there's teen angst, and then I think there's angst when you get into middle age.
Right.
You know, like this, like honestly, there's maybe in your teens and 20s you're trying to figure things out, in your 30s you're trying to go with the program, and then you get to a point where it's like, oh, you know, abort.
Yeah. Yes.
Not working. You know, so we trying to, and that's part of it. That's part of life, right? It's and so I'm glad you pointed out that article, because I think, you know, and there was another article in there called "Thank You" by Robert Bundy.
Yes. Yeah.
That you wrote
Phenomenal.
about when his dad passed, and you know, and then like a bizarre encounter that happened that just was very meaningful. It's very, very touching, you know. So I think that's the thing, you know. It's not, this isn't meant to be a negative. This isn't meant to be a downer, and people are supposed to be negative. It's something I've had a hard time explaining to some relatives and friends who are
right.
Why focus on the darkness? It's like, no, that's, life is dark. That's not my fault.
Have you tried exercising?
It's like, what do you do with it, and where do you go with it? And great art happens from it. Great literature happens from it. Great music happens from it. Fashion, writing, poetry, and on, you know. And that's why we live, you know. I mean, that's the whole thing.
Yeah, no, totally, completely. So, do we have like
Taylor Swift, you know, Taylor Swift and Kelsey, Travis Kelsey.
Travis Kelsey, yeah.
Beyond that, there's other parts of life.
Yeah, 100%. So when, so do you guys have any timeline as to when the second volume is going to be coming out? Or?
It should have been out around now. It's going to be early next year, so I would imagine it'll be realistically it'll be February or March. We're solidifying that, but it shouldn't be beyond that. And then also the podcast will start next year as well. So
yeah, that's awesome. So look for Wednesday. Is it just going to be called Wednesday? You're probably still...
the second coming is the Wednesday, the second coming.
I absolutely love it. That's awesome. We'll definitely make sure to let our viewers and our readers know when that stuff drops, because I can guarantee you the second volume is going to be fascinating. I can't wait to hear the podcast. So we'll definitely talk about those, and more than welcome to come back on and talk about those when they come out.
Yeah, I would love to
chat about those and everything like that. That'd be a lot of fun. So just real quick, I do have a question. One more question. If you were to be able to do a profile on anybody throughout history, if you're able to interview any character, any person for one of these volumes, who would it be? Do you have was there anyone
in history, like living or dead?
Living or dead. I'm just curious. It could be Edgar Allan Poe if you wanted, whoever.
That's a really good. Well, I have to understand what this Jesus Christ character was. Like, you know, first and foremost. But then, yeah, Edgar Allan Poe would be amazing. There's let me think. Alfred Hitchcock, you know, although you hear about these dark geniuses, they had.
Yeah, I don't know that I would. I admire people, but I don't think I'd even want to have lunch with H.P. Lovecraft.
I know.
You know.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah, no, it's totally true. But that's a question. I actually had thought about that recently. If there were 10 living things in the history of Earth that you would want to meet, what would they be? And I was thinking, human or not, like Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Right. What? Absolutely. You
know, Andy Warhol, maybe, you know.
Yeah.
How about you?
Nice thing. I think now you got me thinking, like I would love to just sit down and chat with Jesus.
Yeah.
Be like, bro, what's going on here? Let's figure this out. Edgar Allan Poe would be certainly like just one of the most fascinating interviews, I feel like, and would just be one of the most fascinating people to talk to, I think.
Yeah. Mark Twain, maybe, you know.
Oh my God. Mark, see, there is a lot.
There's
so many.
I think of all the people that I admire, I don't think I want to have lunch with any of them.
No.
Yeah, because they just disappoint you, right?
Yeah, I think like I love Michelangelo, but I have this whole philosophy in my head that he was just like repulsive and probably smelled bad too.
Oh.
I don't know why I have that in my
Yeah.
head.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no,
That's the, it's pretty incredible when you think about it though, because there's certain people that are they're almost supernatural. It's too much, you know what I mean? And
yeah,
but at the end of the day, no, they were just poor slobs,
People.
just like any of it, you know?
yeah,
You know? So,
absolutely. No,
so
100%.
who's winning the Dodgers game now?
Oh, I don't even let me look.
Yeah, we gotta check
You got
this.
to know this. We got to know this before we get off.
Uh, Dodgers are down 4-6. We are at the top of the 8th right now.
Okay.
So,
It's okay. It's okay.
fingers crossed they win. Well, anyways, Kevin Grady, thank you so much for coming on the show. We really, really appreciate it. Had a blast talking to you. Where can they find you on social? Where can they find information about Wednesday?
There's at Wednesday_mag
Okay.
on Instagram, WednesdayMagazine.com. Those are the two main places to find out. And yeah, news coming up as we get this new issue out and everything. And really tell your friends, if you're listening to this, this is really, we're at a really important time where we just need to build that audience, because that's where, we've been having really great organic growth where we're just pushing it, and we'll continue with this next issue. But thanks so much for having me on. And
yeah, no, it was an absolute blast. It was a joy to have you on. Yeah, like I said, you're more than welcome back anytime for the podcast and the second volume as well. But thank you all for joining us. Thank you all for checking out the show. As you can check out PastramiNation.com. You could also check out Pastrami Nation, all the socials, Instagram, Twitter, X, whatever, all that fun stuff, Pinterest, all that fun stuff. And you can go to pastramination.com for all the information, and we'll have info for when the second volume drops. Well, thank you guys.
Thank you so much. Take care, everyone.
Yeah, thank you so much. Y'all have a good night. Take care of
You too.
yourselves and each other. We'll talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.
Bye.